Altered State Adventures, The Secret of Europa, Part 7, the finale. Moon, Europa, System, Sol, Location unknown. Far below the frozen surface, the crew descended silently into the depths of Europa's great ocean. The outside world, murky and cold, passed them by like a trance. The occasional specks of dust and microorganisms, once lit by the submersible's headlights, took the form of sparkling diamonds, floating aimlessly in a sea of darkness. The journey was traveled in relative silence, with the three men in complete and utter awe of what they saw before them, the mystery of their destination, the allure of the glowing object somewhere down there in the deep. The silence was broken every now and then by the distant and somehow overwhelmingly calm sounds of submersed alien life forms.
"Wow, this is amazing,"
said Tin, in a manner that seemed wholly uncharacteristic for him.
"Yeah, it's beautiful."
The seabed was relatively shallow given the expanse of ocean, and the potential depths that undoubtedly lay out there, and the dive took less than an hour. For the crew, it seemed like mere minutes filled with emotional ecstasy. Suddenly, the view before them changed. The darkness began to fade into muted colors. The haze began to take shape and form. The world around them had turned from nothingness into something. And that something was more exciting than anything they had ever dreamed of. For men who lived life in the fast lane, who made fast money and danced with danger, the slow descent was by far the most exhilarating experience of them all. They were not estranged to archaeological findings. They had searched for and found many hidden treasures around the galaxy, be it modern or ancient, personal belongings to be stolen, or items from ancient civilizations to be acquired. Only recently had they raided the newly discovered temple on the Terracotta Plateau. But this was a discovery like no other. A sight no man had ever seen before. A place no human had traversed. This went way, way above the coveted first footfall recognition. This was legendary. The seabed began to take shape. The murky waters became clearer. The soft brownish land was littered with green life, reeds and weeds of all shapes and sizes. Areas of what could only be described as long grass, and amidst it all were the decaying ruins of a once great city. White stone walls, the foundations of houses, great palaces, arenas, places of worship, and humble abodes. Their imaginations ran wild, simply casting their eyes upon the wonders before them. But the biggest wonder of all lay directly at the center, a place untarnished by the currents of time, unwithered by the pressures of the deep, and unharmed by the bitter climate. The dome at the center, its glow now strong enough to light the ruins that surrounded it. Apollo briefly pondered its size, at least 5 or 6 stories in height, and its perimeter, large enough to house any sports stadium. Tin slowed the submersible and gently handled the controls to achieve a soft landing on the seabed. But the speed had carried a little too much, and the submarine penetrated the dome before coming to rest. The crew held their breath in expectation, but nothing happened. The submarine now lay half in and half out, the thin layer of the dome perfectly formed around them, creating an airtight seal that let no water in. The view was now one of perfect clarity.
Bloody hell, it's air. There's no water in here.
How the pissing hell can that happen?
I don't know, Tin, but this is... Exactly, Emo. Some kind of air bubble. I don't know how, but that's what it is.
Well, bloody fortunate I managed to get the sub in then, right?
Oh, sure, like you meant to do that, did you?
Of course I did. Look, the hatch is in the bubble. Now we can get in without getting wet, see?
Right, okay, Tin.
But no movement followed. They simply continued to stare. A moment of hesitation that may have been misconstrued as being safe, keeping an eye out for any dangers before leaving the relative safety of the submersible. But in reality, they were all scared shitless. Eventually, Apollo broke the stunted silence.
Right, come on then. Let's get out there.
Right, yeah, of course. Just
Just what?
you go first, yeah?
Right, okay then. Come on. Emo, get the hatch.
Emo gripped the hatch wheel with his enormously oversized hands and twisted it open. As he did so, a small collection of water fell into the sub and covered the gentle giant. Emo turned and glared at Tin with eyes that very almost showed an emotion.
Right, okay, I'm sorry. But we all expected that to happen, Emo. Well, come on then, Apollo. Off you trot.
Yeah, I'm going. It smells a little funny out there, doesn't it?
Yeah, smells a bit funky, doesn't it?
Right, have you both got your breathing apparatus? Just in case.
Of course we do, Sunshine. Never took it out of my bloody pack, did I?
Right then, let's go.
And with that, Apollo lifted himself up and clambered out of the submarine. Within minutes, the trio stood next to each other, and within seconds, their jaws hung low and open. The domed city of ruined stone sprawled out in all directions, filling the circumference of the dome's protections and spreading out further beyond and into the distance. In the dark blue of the outside ocean, clearly visible through the transparent skin of the dome, life forms could be seen, most small, some incredibly large, their voices muted and muffled.
Wow.
This place.
Words were simply not enough to describe what they were experiencing, and every sentence ended just as quickly as it started. Their voices, as with all sounds in this mystical underwater temple, held a similar echo and reverb to that of a grand cathedral. The glow seemed to penetrate stronger from the outside. The inside held a strange, all-encompassing light, as if daylight itself was upon them. Slowly, taking in the wonder around them, they walked forward, through and past the crumbling white ruins, each one covered in moist green algae. The humidity inside the dome was palpable, and distant drops of water could be heard, moisture dripping onto moss and forming small puddles between the rubble.
What the hell happened here?
Whatever it was. I bet it was long before humans came to be. This place is ancient.
Now they stopped before the magnificent centerpiece. The structure itself looked in many ways similar to an old Greek pantheon. This building, however, seemed untouched by the ravages of whatever war or disaster had struck this place down and razed its city to the ground. This pantheon stood tall. Its white marble pyramidic roofing and Corinthian-style pillars shone brightly, as if the gods themselves had poured their souls into its very architecture. Carefully they climbed the steps and entered the heavenly arena. But before them, amidst the flat plateau of marble, lay a single square hole, and within that hole, a set of stairs that led down to an unknown level. As they descended the cold, hard stairway, their eyes began to adjust to this inner lair. The brightness from outside, replaced by a somber, shadowy underworld. But this room held a glow of its own. It was only small in comparison to the grandeur of the temple, but the walls, flooring, and ceiling were of pure gold. Toward the far side of the room lay a shallow circular pool, only a meter or so deep and a meter or more wide. And that circle of water acted as a moat for what was positioned at its center, a golden plinth, and hovering ever so slightly above that plinth, by the force of some unknown magic, was the trident. The room echoed with every step, and light emanating from somewhere beneath the water radiated through the surface and danced upon the golden walls around them. If ever there was a heavenly throne room for which a god should take his residence, this was surely it.
Oh, that's it then,
said Tin, studying the mythical object. Apollo nodded, his eyes drawn by its beauty, transfixed by its apparent power.
Yeah, look at it. It's
probably worth a lot of money.
Apollo turned to Tin, Emo followed suit, and together, suddenly, they burst into laughter. Well, apart from Emo, of course, who merely performed an extended groan.
Yeah, probably.
It was a laughter that broke the tension, the wonder and the trance they had been in since arriving here. The trident was now before them, and they were finally close, so close to obtaining it.
Right then. I guess we just have to cross the water, right?
Yeah, right.
Well, go on then.
Huh? Why do I have to go first?
Well, just in case.
Oh, right, yeah. Just in case something happens. Oh, you bloody cowards. Fine, watch me then.
Tin began to walk towards the water, and was about to step in when suddenly the surface changed. A slight disturbance swirled, like a circular current had been activated underneath. Ripples began to spread across the moat, and bubbles began to form in a concentrated area. And from those bubbles, a shape began to emerge and grow. The water filled its outline, and the liquid formed a solid figure that rose to meet Tin's eye. Tin jumped backward.
What the pissing Christ is this?
The water swirled.
You flame shatter. What the bloody hell? What did he say?
Apollo shook his head with vigor.
I don't know. I don't speak water.
You are not Atlorian. No, mate. Yet you seek the trident.
Yes, we do. What are you, exactly?
I am an entity, like yourself, but I have no physical form. Water is my vessel. Ah, right. Well, glad we cleared that up then. I am bound by the Guardians of Atloria to protect the Power Staff until such time as my replacement comes.
You're a Guardian. I thought you were extinct.
I am no Guardian. I am merely bound by them as protector of the staff. Blimey. So they're still out there somewhere?
Yeah, we thought, those guys are ancient. Jeez, every pilot in this galaxy probably has some form of Guardian weaponry on their ship.
They are only where they need to be. And yes, it saddens them that you find use for their technology. They themselves no longer need such trivial things, for they ascend beyond all levels of comprehension. So, what are you then? I am an entity. Yeah, but there is no need for any further clarification. I am, and that is all.
Will you let us take the trident?
Are you sworn to protect it? Oh, look, son, we're just gonna take it, all right?
And he stepped forward to enter the water.
Tin, no!
But as Tin's foot hung in midair, the water being simultaneously evaporated from one spot and reappeared in another, the force of its formation pushing Tin off balance.
Crikey, you! Right, that's it, sonny.
And with that, Tin swung at the being blocking his path, but his fist merely travelled through its head, like punching a waterfall.
What the hell?
Apollo quickly raised his hands in an effort to de-escalate the situation.
Yes, we are. We will protect it.
The water entity once again evaporated and reappeared beside Apollo.
You mean to protect the staff?
Yes, we do. But not here. Look around. This place is ancient. It's not defended. And more humans will come. Are you not tired of this life, this dedication to a cause you don't know the meaning of?
The water being tilted its head, pondering the question.
We will take it to a place where no one can access it. No one can control it. That is why we are here.
You have no mark. You are not Guardian nor Atlorian. You...
Apollo subconsciously fingered the pendant around his neck as Killian's words suddenly repeated in his head.
You will know when to use it.
In one moment, Apollo removed the necklace, held up the pendant, and spoke using the water creature's words.
We, as immortals, will protect the Power Staff, and you shall let us pass, under Guardian instruction.
A brief moment of silence followed as the suspense within the golden chamber heightened. And then, The water being snatched the pendant from Apollo's hand and immediately deconstructed itself, the water falling down in a mighty splash that spread ripples throughout the moat's entirety. Another second followed before Tin broke the silence.
So, is that it then? Has he let us pass?
I think so.
Right. Okay then. Well, what are you waiting for, sunshine?
Apollo turned to face Tin.
Yeah, that's right. It's your turn to go first now, fella.
Apollo turned to face Emo.
Okay, I'll do it.
He eventually said, gingerly taking his first step into the warm water. And it was when he was halfway in that his body suddenly froze, his limbs unable to move, his mind seemingly being penetrated by another's thoughts. Tin stood upright.
Ow, are you okay, mate?
But Apollo could neither talk nor move. His mind was filling with words that were not his own.
Beneath the scars the bubble lies. Beware to pierce with those free eyes.
Oi, Apollo!
Apollo turned, able to use his body once more, his mind now crystal clear.
We broke through the scars on Europa's surface. We found the bubble that lies beneath the waves.
Tin looked increasingly worried by this random outcry.
Yeah, mate. But are you sure you're okay, though?
No, I don't think we can take the trident out of the dome. If we do, it will pierce it. Beware to pierce with those free eyes. The bubble will burst. No more air.
Ah, right, okay. I get it now. So what do we do then?
We'll figure it out later,
said Apollo, turning to step onto the inner island. He approached the plinth. The trident hummed before him as it hovered in midair. Slowly, carefully, almost hesitantly, he grabbed the magnificent item. Its weight was tremendous, shimmering with gold and encrusted with brilliant green emeralds. He could almost feel the power of the staff through his body, traversing his veins. But this, and all other thoughts, were quickly subsided by what they all heard next. Voices.
Might as well give in. You're done for.
Tin and Emo spun around as Apollo quickly splashed through the shallow water to join them.
Who the hell is that?
Oh, somebody must have followed us.
How?
I don't know. But we gotta get out of here, mates. And fast.
The trio departed the golden chamber with haste, quickly ascended the stairs, and then they froze. For as they stood, mighty and godlike amidst the pantheon, below them, just before the stairs, stood a familiar face, and behind that familiar face stood a small army.
Never in my wildest dreams had I ever imagined it would happen in such a place. But I think we both knew this day would come.
Apollo hung his head low.
How?
Apollo.
Suddenly, a deep thunderous rumble began to reverberate around the dome. A few heads raised to inspect the fragile barrier that protected them from certain death.
How did you get here? How did you find us?
I have been tracking you for some time. Since Mars, in fact.
Since Mars? And you didn't care to help us when Quaid nearly killed us off.
You survived, didn't you? Anyways, by the time I got to your ship, you were just setting off again. If it wasn't for that call, I may not have found you at all.
Tin shook his head, still holding a heavy grudge against the rival trader that left them to die a cold and silent death in space.
As for the how, well, as you can see, I have a lot more resources at my disposal than you have.
Apollo looked beyond the gathering of soldiers toward the large submarine at the dome's edge. It was clearly designed for this purpose, an all-terrain underwater submersible with solid chain tracks on both sides for traction and travel on the seabed. Apollo suspected it had to be the original vehicle that was to be used for the survey team that Will Turner had previously mentioned.
I see you have the trident.
I do.
I must congratulate you and your crew, Apollo. I don't know how you do it, but you always seem to deliver.
A man stepped forward to stand slightly in front of the Interpol agent, a man who had clearly had enough of the small talk.
Give it to us now and we'll let you live.
Tin shrugged as he glared down toward the police chief.
Enough with the formalities then.
For once we are not stealing this thing, Hal. We need to take this to the Alliance.
I am the Alliance, an Interpol agent as you well know, and you'll excuse me if I don't quite trust you. I can take it from here.
The police chief released a wry laughter.
None of you are taking it for sod's sake. I'll be taking it into custody.
Hal spun around.
This is my case. You told me you would go along.
I told you what you wanted to hear. We're taking that trident nice and clean, or we'll be killing every single one of them to get it. Either way is fine with us.
Apollo and Tin stepped back a little. The conversation was beginning to break down. Hal frowned, his face betraying the fury bubbling beneath the surface.
You can't do that. You're bound by Federation procedures. And
Look, pal, the Alliance, and especially Ratcatcher, don't have any jurisdiction in this system.
I can act as an authority on any planetary soil. I don't have rank over planetary police, but you're not—
That don't mean sod all down here, pal.
So what? You're just going to murder them without trial?
Don't you get it by now, you fool? I'm not Federation. You really let yourself down as a detective agent, you know.
Well, what the hell are you then?
Ah, for God's sakes, do we have to spell it out for you? This whole time you were warned about the Achilles Corporation going after the Trident. Desperate to gain this power, we had undercover agents planted everywhere in this system. You remember the black cell that was tasked with obtaining it?
The man turned around to face his men.
Well, say hello to the Achilles Intelligence Group, pal.
The foe chief unholstered his weapon in a show of force, and immediately the crew reacted, running back toward the stairs. But as the bullets began flying, they quickly took cover behind the enormous Corinthian pillars.
Jesus Christ! What the hell are we gonna do, Al?
There's nothing we can do.
Said Apollo, grabbing his weapon. The crew exchanged fire, but the small opposing army took no casualties, all behind the cover of the ruins. Hal Salvin could only watch as the army slowly gained ground, and Apollo's crew retreated further.
Get back! We've gotta go!
Where to?
Screamed Tin, as the trio departed the Pantheon from pillar to pillar, and mazed their way through the crumbling ruins to the dome's edge.
Oh, this is pissing great. Now what? We're at the other end of a bloody dome, and a small sodding army between us and our sub.
The army slowly descended upon their position, spreading out to attempt a pincer maneuver. The chief called out.
You might as well give up, boys. You're done for.
Hal trailed behind them. He had not drawn his weapon. He hadn't needed to, nor had he wanted to.
Apollo, please. Just let them have the damn thing. Lay down your weapons.
A shot rang throughout the dome and ricocheted off the crumbling ruin before them.
Oh, this is it, Al. We're bloody done for.
Apollo said nothing, his mind racing.
I know, Emo, I know.
Oh, God, I can't believe it. Not like this, for shit's sake.
The foe chief called out again.
Enough time. We've surrounded you. Give us the trident or we'll finish this.
Apollo turned to his men. The look of peril in their eyes saddened him deeply. The journey they had been on raced through his mind. His friends needed him, but there were no guarantees. Not now. Not anymore.
I might have a plan, but it's risky. Very risky.
Another bullet embedded itself in the rubble.
That's it. We're coming.
The dome rumbled once more above them, threatening to collapse any minute.
Oh, shit. There's no way we're getting out of here alive. Come on, Al. What's this plan? What is it?
Apollo took a breath.
Okay, this is what we're gonna do.
And as Apollo quickly informed his crew of the plan, and as Hal hopelessly watched on, the Achilles army closed in, their guns drawn, their intentions clear. Now, amidst the gunfire, Apollo and his crew ran one final time towards the dome's perimeter. They couldn't be surrounded from here, couldn't be flanked from the rear. Sporadically they turned and fired, each shot aimlessly launched, too high, too covered, too many. The dome continued to rumble, its supernatural sounds now amplified by the clatter of bullets and plasma bolts. It seemed remarkable that no one was hit, but panic blurred their vision, and adrenaline rushed their aiming. Still, they worked together, hoping to reach the dome and circle back round to their sub, from cover to cover, one ruin at a time. But amidst the flying bullets, the trio became separated. Apollo crouched behind a tall ruin as he watched Tin take cover behind the next building along. Emo ran frantically to catch up with them, but in the chaos, he tripped and fell. He briefly fumbled around in the dust and rubble before turning to face an opening, and within that opening, a hail of bullets sped toward him. Several shots rang through the air, and Emo, almost in slow motion, stumbled backwards, his body convulsing with impact after impact as he fell backwards and faded through the dome. Tin stood with wild fire in his eyes.
Emo! No, Emo!
He roared as he left his cover and launched into a desperate run to save his friend. Now it was Apollo who could only watch as Tin ran directly into open fire.
Tin, no!
And Tin suffered a similar fate. A bullet ripped through his leg. A sputter of blood misted the air as several more bullets flew in Tin's direction until his body, like that of his friend, fell limply through the dome and into the cold ocean beyond. The gunshots ceased, and an eerie silence filled the dome as Apollo watched the bodies of his friends float away into the darkness beyond the dome. Suddenly, a cry filled the air.
Enough!
It was Hell, pleading for peace.
Apollo! Please. Please.
His words, and the actions that had led to this point, were devastating enough. Apollo lifted the trident above the ruined wall, and then slowly, he stood, his hands in the air, his head sunk low.
I surrender,
he said, and the army immediately surrounded him. The false chief recovered the trident with a devilish grin painted across his face. A soldier cuffed and detained Apollo as they began the long walk back to the submarine, and Hal, his shoulders low, his voice lower, offered his condolences with utmost sincerity. Three weeks later, High Court hearing, Columbus Station, Seoul. Within the intentionally old-fashioned and supremely somber hall of the High Court, a lone man stood before a sea of faces that all glared back at him, his face displaying a melancholy portrayal, one of a wild animal that had finally been caught and caged. A tall man in an extremely expensive suit approached him. The court fell silent. All ears were listening.
Can you state your name for the court, please?
My name is Apollo Sky.
You realize the gravity of why you are here today? What you are being accused of?
I do,
said Apollo, briefly looking at his watch.
Have you someplace to be, Mr. Sky?
Apollo grinned.
Not yet.
You don't seem to be taking this too seriously. Maybe I should remind you, multiple accounts of theft, breaking and entering, repeated evasion of the law, attempted murder of a police officer, destruction of property, manslaughter, and the attempted theft of a national treasure, an artifact belonging to the Federation. Not to mention, we have an Alliance officer accusing you of corporate espionage.
A national treasure you didn't know existed. Besides, most of what you just listed is nonsense.
I put it to you that not only are you guilty of these crimes, but also the deceased members of your crew, a Mr. Tin McTucker, and a man presumably going by the name of Emo. Not that these men will ever come to justice themselves, eh?
Apollo merely returned the man's gaze. That is, of course, until the trident was brought into the courtroom. Apollo looked at the faces staring back at him, and sure enough, Hal Salvin was one of them. He merely offered Apollo a friendly wink. Somehow, that uptight bastard had outsmarted the Achilles Corporation and grabbed the trident for the Alliance. The lawyer sneered. It's utterly useless. It holds no power at all.
Still, worth a pretty penny though, I imagine.
Would you care to enlighten us on why?
Because you pierced the bubble with its 3 eyes.
The man stared blankly back at him, and so Apollo continued.
It means that when the Trident left the protective dome, not only did the dome itself collapse, but also the staff's power was rendered useless beyond it. The power you crave, the knowledge of how to wield such a weapon has been long forgotten. It belonged to an ancient species from an ancient time.
The trident was placed upon a table at the front of the courtroom, mere yards away from Apollo's reach. Apollo grinned slightly as he again looked down toward his watch.
Still, I'm glad you brought it in though. I was kind of hoping you would do that.
The lawyer turned to face the court, but before he could speak, Apollo stood and cut the man off.
You're done talking now.
The judge bellowed.
Order! Order in the courtroom! Sir, please sit down!
But Apollo ignored the judge.
There will be order, there will be justice, but none of you lot will deliver it. That, good sirs, will be up to me.
Apollo jumped over the wooden panel that contained him. He glanced down one last time at his watch as the security guards moved in around him.
Listen, this has all been a pleasure and all that, but I'm afraid it's time for me to bid you good people farewell.
Hal Salvin stood up, his voice raging over the crowd.
Apollo! What have you done, Apollo?
Apollo grinned from cheek to cheek.
Not just me, Hal. You best take cover, mate. The chase is about to begin once more.
And with that, the courtroom doors burst open as a clatter of smoke grenades hit each corner of the room. A mask was flung toward Apollo, who caught it and put it on with haste as the tear gas began to billow. Panic filled the room, and through it all, amidst the smoke and chaos, the familiar silhouettes of two men appeared.
Everybody on the pissing ground! Now! Nobody move!
Cried Tim, frantically waving his manticore tormentor.
Well, what the pissing bollocks are you waiting for, Al? Let's go!
Apollo grabbed the trident from the table and disappeared into the smoke. And just like that, as quickly as they had come, the trio were once again in the wind. By the time the smoke had cleared, and the temporary force barriers had been deactivated around the courtroom, Apollo and his crew had made their way through to the shipyard via the cargo bays, entered the Crate Phantom, and thrust their way through the station's mail slot, and out into the blackness, before security could even be notified. On board the Bunty, now safely several systems away, Apollo was finally able to relax, his heart beginning to slow, the adrenaline wearing off.
Oh man, it's good to see you guys again. I was afraid you weren't going to show.
Of course we were going to show, you bloody idiot.
I mean, you know, in case you'd got caught or anything. I mean, I didn't even know the plan had worked, or that you'd bitten the bullet out there on Europa.
Nah, mate. I mean, Emo done it the right way. He had his breathing apparatus in his hand when he fell through the dome. I had to bloody fumble around in my backpack to get my one. Almost forgot to activate my bloody shield, which is why I took a bullet in the leg. It's okay though. It worked out, didn't it? Glad I got this new suit after all, I'll tell you that much.
And the sub?
Yeah, we met up outside the dome where we were sure we couldn't be seen. By the time we swam around the dome to the other side, all the guards were facing inward toward the temple. We just walked in and snuck inside the sub without anyone seeing us.
Damn. This has to go down in the history books.
I think it will, pal. I think it bloody well will. So where to next then, boss?
Apollo turned to face the black space before him. Each and every star burning bright, begging for attention, asking for adventure.
The next chapter is out there somewhere for us. We just gotta find it.
He said, activating the frameshift drive and ramming the throttle forward. Several days after the courtroom incident, a long and peculiar parcel arrived on Hal Salvin's desk. A moment passed as he considered opening it, but eventually he did, and what he saw filled his heart. He reached in and lifted the trident in the air. Money had been traded for a bargaining chip, or maybe it was just a gesture of goodwill. Either way, Hal looked out of his window and nodded gratefully to the sky. The secret of Europa had been discovered, and the trident, now very much in the public eye, was safe and secure. But its power still lingered, hidden within the murky depths of history. A power that could still have been awoken if it were studied, If it were maybe in the right hands, maybe. Quaid would definitely welcome the monetary reward of such an item, but there was one other. A man that had the power and the resources to travel down that path. A man that was himself just as secretive as any elusive object from days gone by. And as he glared at the flickering screen in his dark room, the dull glow was just enough to shine light on the devilishly sinister grin that began to emerge. It was a grin that was indeed very sublime.